of Time community, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing okay. A little tired. It's been really crazy the last couple of weeks, but I'm really glad to be doing a podcast with you today.
Yay! Before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. I just love how dramatic I always say that.
Dun,
anyway.
dun, dun. Go for it.
All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today, we're going to be discussing chapters 18 and 19 of The Great Hunt, where we see Aes Sedai's on boats, Rand's raging hormones almost get him killed, and then the Horn of Valere. Chapter 18 is called To the White Tower, and the icon is the Flame of Tarvalon.
Here's a quick summary to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. The ships carrying the Aes Sedai raced down the river, carried further and faster by wind created by Sadar. Eggs goes down to her shared cabin to tell Nynaeve, who is extremely seasick and miserable, that they will be arriving in Tarvalon that day. Eggs says that she's worried about Rand. She has had more dreams about him, and she knows he's in danger. Nynaeve asks her if Anaya has said any more about the dreams, and Eggs vents her frustration that she's been no help at all. They're interrupted by the Amyrlin Seat herself, who tells them that she will be giving them their lesson. Nynaeve stubbornly tries to excuse herself, but Swan commands her to sit. She tells Nynaeve that she's heard of her temper from the other sisters, and some of them think she should spend time as a novice, but Swan believes in rewarding talent and thinks Nynaeve deserves to be accepted. Nynaeve complains that she'd rather the warders teach her the sword or something useful instead, and Swan sets to teach Nynaeve exactly how useful the power can be. After a few simple tricks to start with, she wraps them both in air so they can't move anything but their heads, and she floats Nynaeve. Swan really tries to get Nynaeve's temper going by threatening to turn her upside down and paddle her, when suddenly Swan is thrown backwards against the wall. Swan is impressed with Nynaeve's strength and says that she's heard Nynaeve wounds quickly, but has to be angry to show her power. Swan offers that they release each other simultaneously, but Nynaeve is too angry for that. To Nynaeve's surprise, Swan cuts her off from the power and explains that when Nynaeve reaches her full potential, no single woman will be able to shield her like that. Nynaeve, who is still floating, continues to try to out stubborn Swan, who says that if she had a hair less potential, she'd make Nynaeve a novice for life. But she will see Nynaeve gets what she deserves. Then she drops Nynaeve hard on her ass. After Eggs reminds Swan that she is still in the room and is released from her bonds, they continue the lesson. It's the hardest one to date. Swan wrung every drop of effort out of them and then some, especially Nynaeve. Swan did everything she could think of to get Nynaeve's temper up, and by the time the Amyrlin leaves the cabin, Nynaeve is out for blood. She rails a bit about all the nasty things she'd like to do to the Amyrlin, and then they feel a change in the way the boat is moving. They go on deck and see that they are docking in Tarvalon. The city is awe-inspiring, and the girls gawk like tourists. Now that they have arrived, the Aes Sedai don't spare a glance for them, so Eggs and Nynaeve get themselves off the boat and aren't sure what to do. They are met on the dock by Aes Sedai, keeper of the keys at mistress of novices in the tower. Nynaeve immediately informs her that she is not to be a novice. The Amyrlin said so. Sheriam is aware of the unusual circumstances, but warns Nynaeve that special treatment or no, she can still be called to the mistress's study for punishment. She welcomes Eggs as the new novice and prepares her to work harder than she's ever worked in her life as they see if she will break under the strain. Nynaeve tries to intercede on Eggs' behalf, saying that she knows a little of what the novices must go through and does it really have to be that hard. Sheriam laughs and asks if Nynaeve is referring to their lesson with the Amyrlin. Sheriam tells her not to worry about her friend. They save that kind of stuff for the first couple weeks as accepted. Then she scoops them up and leads them to their fate.
Poor Nynaeve is sick as a dog on this boat.
Yeah.
And it will become well-established fact that she always gets horribly seasick. But this time, she has an excuse. One of the reasons that Nynaeve is so motion sick is because the Aes Sedai are using the power to generate wind to speed the boats along.
Right.
Riverboats were not designed for storm waters the same way that large sea-based boats are. So if the river is really choppy because of unnatural winds, the boat would be tossed around more than usual. Like, she would be sick anyway, but in this case, she's extra sick.
Yeah, I feel bad for Nynaeve because as someone who does get motion sick, I feel her pain. And I think it's hilarious that Jordan keeps going back to the same trait for her because they have to go on boats so often. But it's also like, oh, poor girl, I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah. One thing I really like about the beginning of this chapter is how Egwene is opening up to Nynaeve about her concerns to Rand in her dreams. Mm-hmm. I think that once they have that shared moment in the Eye of the World when they're in the Blight and Egwene realizes Nynaeve can channel as well, the relationship starts to change. Mm-hmm. We see the relationship shift over the next few books where it's no longer accepted in wisdom, but two women on equal footing.
Yeah.
I may not like where the relationship ends up, but I do like the way it changes in these first couple of books.
Yeah, totally. I love scenes where it's a battle of wills between two strong women, and they don't come stronger than Nynaeve and Swan. This lesson that Suan gives is just, it's fantastic to read about. Right from the beginning, you know Nynaeve is in for it when Swan tells her that she always believes in giving people what they deserve.
Yeah.
Swan says that the other sisters told her that Nynaeve had a temper like a fisher-bird with a bone in its throat. She does everything she can to get Nynaeve's anger up and keep it up. Swan and Nynaeve are two of my favorite characters, so I have to read some of this scene out loud. I hope you will indulge me.
Please do. I love this scene.
Okay. If I must learn all this, Nynaeve broke in stiffly, I would as soon learn something useful. All this, make the air stir, Nynaeve, like the candle, Nynaeve. Now put it out, light it again. Pah. Egwene closed her eyes for a moment. Please, Nynaeve, please keep a check on your temper. She bit her lip to keep from saying it out loud. The Amyrlin was silent for a moment. Useful, she said at last. Something useful. You wanted a sword. Suppose a man came at me with a sword. What would I do? Something useful, you can be sure. This, I think. For an instant, Egwene thought she saw a glow around the woman at the other end of the bed. Then the air seemed to thicken. Nothing changed that Egwene could see, but she could surely feel it. She tried to lift her arm. It did not budge any more than if she were buried to her neck in thick jelly. Nothing could move except her head. Release me, Nynaeve grated. Her eyes glared and her head jerked from side to side, but the rest of her sat as rigidly as a statue. Egwene realized that she was not the only one held. Let me go. Useful, wouldn't you say? And it is nothing but air. The Amyrlin spoke in a conversational tone as if they were all chatting over tea. Big man with his muscles and his sword, and the sword does him as much good as the hair on his chest. Let me go, I say. And if I don't like where he is, why, I can pick him up. Nynaeve squawked furiously as she slowly rose, still in a sitting position, until her head almost touched the ceiling. Skipping forward a little. Nynaeve's head jerked furiously, but not another muscle of her twitched. The light burn you, let me go! Egwene swallowed hard in hope she was not also to be lifted. So, the Amyrlin continued, big hairy man and so forth. He can do nothing to me while I can do anything at all to him. Why, if I had a mind to... She leaned forward, her eyes intent on Nynaeve. Suddenly, her smile did not seem very friendly. I could turn him upside down and paddle his bottom. Just like... Suddenly, the Amyrlin flew backwards so hard her head rebounded from the wall, and there she stayed as if something were pressing against her. Egwene stared, her mouth dry. This isn't happening. It isn't. They were right, the Amyrlin said. Her voice sounded strained, as though she found it hard to breathe. They said you learned quickly, and they said it took your temper burning to get to the heart of what you can do. She took a struggling breath. Shall we release each other together, child? Nynaeve, floating in the air with her eyes ablaze, said, You let me go right now, or I'll... Abruptly, a look of amazement came over her face, a look of loss. Her mouth worked silently. The Amyrlin sat up, working her shoulders. You don't know everything yet, do you, child? Not the 100th part of everything. You did not suspect I could cut you off from the true source. You can still feel it there, but you can't touch it any more than a fish can touch the moon. When you learn enough to be raised to full sisterhood, no one woman will be able to do that to you. The stronger you become, the more Aes Sedai it will take to shield you against your will. Do you think now you want to learn? Nynaeve pressed her mouth shut in a thin line and stared her in the eye grimly. The Amerlin sighed. If you had a hair less potential than you do, child, I would send you to the Mistress of Novices and tell her to keep you the rest of your life. But you will get what you deserve. Nynaeve's eyes widened, and she had just time to start the yell before she dropped, hitting her bed with a loud thud. I love that scene so much.
Yeah, it's great for all kinds of reasons. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take my self-allotted one dig at Egwene for this chapter.
Just one?
Just one. Just one. I'm harsh on her, so just one. When Egwene has to remind Suan that she's still in the room and still bound with air, Suan says, "Oh, I'm sorry, child. Your friend has occupied my attention, I'm afraid." This makes me laugh every time because this point of view is from Egwene's perspective. We've already mentioned how hard it is for her not to be the center of attention, so it's just pure funny to me.
Yeah, totally.
All right, this lesson is extremely hard for both of them, but especially for Nynaeve.
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder about the processes we use to train people for specific and demanding things. Like, it does not matter if it's sending a soldier to boot camp or sports players going to Hell Week or various other examples of people training that becomes all-encompassing and kind of unreasonable. Mm-hmm. As a culture, we just accept that there's always a certain amount of physical or mental conditioning that can be accomplished through intense and sometimes painful training regimens. Mm-hmm. When Swan force feeds Nynaeve the horrible tasting glob to try to get her anger stoked, she's doing it with a very specific goal, and it's Nynaeve's best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. But a question I ask myself more and more lately is, at what point are we crossing the line over into abuse when we subject ourselves to these kind of intense and demanding training regimens? Now, I'm not saying every high school, college football team is a cult.
Go ahead and say it.
Well, okay, you can say that. or that we're abusing students. What I am saying is that right now, where I'm in my life, I'm not sure I know whether or not the scene crosses the line.
Yeah, I agree. The line is fuzzy. And it's for a good reason. Like,
right,
Sheriam
totally
explains that the training is so hard because if the woman is going to break, then it needs to be when she's still an initiate in the tower and not when she's a full sister out in the world with people depending on her.
Exactly.
Like, that makes sense. The life of an Aes Sedai is hard and dangerous. And if she isn't in control of herself 100% of the time, she could get herself or worse, someone else killed. But we'll see that when the Supergirls are out in the world. I mean, hell, they inadvertently start a war.
Or two.
Yeah. The problem is that there's a fine line between this high intensity training and abuse.
Yeah.
And the very nature of being broken down and then rebuilt in the image of the tower is that the line keeps getting drawn and redrawn until it disappears altogether.
Yeah.
But by that point, they've been trained to power through. You know, like, just look at what Elida does to Moraine and Swan before they test for the shawl in New Spring. I mean, it's Elida who's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but
True.
Still, they don't want to report it. And when the other sisters find out, Elida is reprimanded for helping them cheat, not for abusing them.
Right?
But it's straight up abuse. Like, there's no question. And, I mean, we can talk more about how screwed up the tower is later, like when we see Nynaeve's accepted test. But
yes.
I agree that the training definitely dances with this line.
Yeah. Our introduction to Sheriam has some information that's really easy to just blow right by your first time through reading. Mm-hmm. Tarvalon was the first Ogier-built city after the breaking, and there were only 20 Aes Sedai at the time. There are over 500 or so people living in the city at that time. That's really humble beginnings for a place that came to impact the world so much. I mean, my high school graduating class was about 500 people. She also tells us about how few novices there are these days and how worrisome that is.
Yeah, and that'll keep coming up, how few novices there are.
Yeah, there's something going on there.
Yeah. I love that as soon as Sheriam introduces herself as Mistress of Novices, Nynaeve immediately says that she isn't supposed to be a novice, that Emerald said so.
Right.
She's all like, no choice for me. Nope, nope, nope. She just wants to make it really, really clear.
Yeah.
You know what? I totally get that because I'd be the same way. Like, I hate to admit it, but I totally would be the same way.
I think most of us would be. Reading this intro into Sheriam makes me mad.
Okay.
Like, Sheriam is the perfect mistress of novices. She's nurturing, she's approachable, and not afraid to put an arm around her shoulder to connect with her charges. And the fact that she's a dark friend is just so unfair.
Yeah.
Like, you mentioned before that Jordan must have changed his mind about her, and I agree. But then again, she's also the perfect asset for the Black Aes, because she has influence over every new novice that comes in.
Yeah.
I really liked her until we found out she's on the dark side.
Yeah, the thing about Sheriam is that, well, I get why Jordan made her Black Aja, and I agree that it was a good choice to make. It just doesn't read to me like he knew she was black from day one.
Yeah.
I feel like he made that decision later on. You know, like, I'm sure that he knew by the time we get to, like, Saladar. And obviously, Sheriam would have had to play it cool in order to keep her status as Mistress of Novices under any competent Amyrlin.
Right.
And she couldn't act as obviously evil as some of the other Black sisters. And I know that Sheriam only joined the Black for political reasons and not because she was, like, super evil. And
True.
She didn't expect to get caught up in all this end of days drama. But that sort of feels like retconning.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll pay closer attention during this read through and see if I change my mind about Sheriam. But I really do feel that decision wasn't made until maybe book 3 or later.
And like you said, it's a good decision from like a plot twist standpoint and from like a
yeah.
emotional impact standpoint.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's a great writing decision, but
Oh, yeah. I just
know if it was
don't
made
think he
here.
made it from day one. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't, you know. There's a lot of good reasoning and arguments about why it was such a surprise that, he totally knew because, you know, of her position, she had to do this. And, you know, basically what I just laid out. Like, I understand those arguments and I agree that those are valid arguments. I just don't know if I personally buy it, which is fine. I can have that opinion.
Other people can have theirs.
Yeah,
Yes.
it ultimately doesn't matter. You know, I'm not saying that Sheriam wasn't Black Aja. She totally was. But I just don't think she always was in the contents of the books. You know, like I don't think that decision was made from the very beginning, personally. But, you know, I will read closer and see if I change my mind. That happens.
It does. All right. Nynaeve trying to intercede on Egwene's behalf about the difficulty of her training is kind of sweet.
It is.
She's still trying to look after her people and finding out that as an accepted, she's actually the one who's going to have a really hard training to look forward to is a little funny to end cap this whole chapter.
Yeah.
And that wraps up chapter 18. But before we get to chapter 19, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
Today's episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru is brought to you by anti-nausea wristbands. Never board a boat or a bouncy carriage again without pressure on your neg 1 point. Proper food and rest are essential for getting through those brutal Aes Sedai lessons intact, so don't let seasickness get in your way. Anti-nausea wristbands. Your cabin mates will thank you.
Chapter 19 is called Beneath the Dagger, and the icon is the horn.
Rand and co. are camped beneath Kinslayer's dagger, because that is the last place Huron smelled Fane's dark friends in the other world. Rand thinks that it is past time to be gone, but every time he's tried to leave, Celine would look into his eyes, touch his arm, and sweet-talk him into staying one more day. One night, Rand catches Celine rummaging through his stuff. He is suspicious at first, taking his saddlebags from her and making sure that the dragon banner is undisturbed. She tells him that she wants to clean her dress and was looking for one of his shirts to put on. He gives her one and she starts undressing right there in front of him. He turns away from her in a panic and she laughs at his modesty. Searching for something to say to avoid thinking about her undressing, he tells Selene that they will be leaving for Carrion the next day. They talk about the horn for a minute until she tells him that he can turn around again. When he turns, the sight of her in nothing but his shirt renders him speechless. She takes her advantage to get closer to him and talk of glory and the future they can have together. But before things can progress further, Huron runs up shouting for Lord Rand. The noise wakes Loyal, and both of them are shocked to have interrupted Rand and Selene in such an intimate moment. Huron says he spotted a fire and thinks it's the Dark Friends thereafter. Rand says that they will follow them until Ingtar catches up, but Selene does not like the idea of Rand handing off the glory of finding the horn to another man. She convinces him to at least go see for himself if they even have the horn and how many men there are exactly. She also convinces him to take Loyal for his keen eyesight and strength. Rand and Loyal sneak through the darkness toward the camp, but Rand keeps getting distracted with thoughts of Selene. He forms the void without trying and struggles to resist Seden beckoning to him. They come upon the camp, and Rand can see the chest that holds the horn with Mat's dagger on top of it. They have a close call where they're almost discovered by a Trolloc before it goes back to sleep. Rand wrestles with what to do. Selene's influence is heavy in his mind, and to Loyal's horror, he creeps through the camp of Dark Friends and Trollocs toward the horn. Trying to touch it as little as possible, Rand quickly tucks the dagger behind his belt. A very panicked Loyal had managed to sneak behind Rand and was able to lift the chest with the horn. Carefully, they creep back out of the camp and into the trees. Just as Rand thinks that they've done it, he hears Fane's voice screaming that it is gone, and he knows it was Althor. He sends the Trollocs to find him. Rand and Loyal are sneaking through the trees trying to get back to their horses when a Trolloc finds them. Rand stabs the Trolloc and tells Loyal to run away with the horn as another one appears. Wrapped in the void with a singular purpose, Rand slices and dices his way through Trolloc after Trolloc, a feat of true badassery. Loyal is frantic to be away, but Rand is almost in a trance as he kills the beasts. He finally lets go of the void and snaps out of it in time for he and Loyal to hightail it out of there back to Selene and Huron. Selene is exuberant that Rand has the horn and wants to have a look at it. Rand sends Huron to make sure that the Dark Friends didn't follow and tells Selene that he doesn't know how to open the chest. She has no problem opening it, and they get a good look at the horn while Selene talks about how great Rand will be. He tells her that he is taking the horn to Lord Egomar in Shinar, and she tells him that it's madness to do so. She tells him the Dark Friends will be after him now that he has the horn, so he can't go back. She flirts her way into convincing him to go on to Carrion. Rand pulls out the ruby-hilted dagger, and Selene tells him that it's too dangerous and he should just get rid of it. Rand refuses because Mat needs the dagger, and he closes it up in the chest with the horn. A tight-lipped Selene reluctantly agrees that the chest will protect them from it and sourly says that she wants to sleep. Rand wants to get as far away from Fane and his Dark Friends as they can and won't listen to her arguments. She angrily calls him stubborn and watches him in a way that makes him feel uneasy as he saddles her horse. Fane is in a fury over the loss of the horn and the dagger. He kills the Trollocs that bring him news that they couldn't find Althor. Fane has enough of the Dark One's gift left in him that he knows Rand was somewhere in the mountains, but not exactly where. He cackles madly into the night, raving that he is a dog no longer and that the world would pay for what was done to him.
Lanfear is still playing Rand like a fiddle. Mm-hmm. He accepts everything she says at face value when he catches her rummaging through his stuff. But Rand trying to maintain a sense of what is proper is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Lanfear borrows his shirt and asks him to help her take her dress off, looking to get some action. And his response is all like, but we're not even engaged. I mean, I'm glad he didn't sleep with Lanfear because that would have been bad.
Yeah.
But could you be any more awkward, Rand?
Yeah, she has her flirting power turned up to 11, and Rand is no match for it.
Nope.
He literally can't get words out when he sees her in just his shirt. Her bare legs take away his power of speech. I don't know. This feels like it's over the top. I'm trying to give Rand the benefit of the doubt here because he's a virgin from a very conservative background, out on his own for the first time. It's well established that he's not used to seeing bodies, so even Celine's bare legs sends him into a tizzy. I'm thinking back to my college days and how the freshman boys acted. I've never been a young man, so I don't know how much testosterone screws with your brain.
A lot.
I mean, I don't have a problem with Rand being a horn dog, but they're just legs. Get a grip, Rand. This is the third chapter where Rand is drooling over Celine while acting like an idiot.
Yeah.
And we're still not done. It just seems a little insulting to both men and women. But I don't think that I can clearly articulate why, But it does. I don't know. I'm not a fan. Lanfear is easily manipulating him. She's got him wrapped around her finger, and he's doing almost everything she wants. Yep. The only thing keeping him from being completely taken over is that deep streak of Two Rivers stubbornness. Don't leave home without it.
Nope.
I don't know. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Like, I find it frustrating, too, because I remember being a boy in my 20s, and I remember, being in a conservative environment and how sexually repressed it was. And I don't remember losing my mind to this level, but, I'm not every person either.
Like, when you saw a girl in a bathing suit or whatever, that's mostly naked, you were still able to speak, right? True,
but I think we need to be careful not to confuse, like, our culture with the culture that Rand grew up with either. Because they didn't... Rand, the most he ever saw was, like, girls, maybe, like, young girls, like, tie up their skirts a bit so they can get their, ankles and maybe some of their shins in the water.
But, like, once they became more women, then
that was
they didn't
inappropriate for them to do.
But, I mean, that's why I mentioned a bathing suit, like, for the most part... When you saw young women as a young man, they were fully clothed. But like a bikini, they're practically naked. So it'd be about the same, I think.
Yeah, but I grew up seeing women in bikinis on TV all the time, though.
Oh, that's true.
Like that was not something new to me, is what I'm trying to say.
That's true. Yeah, we do sexualize women constantly.
And that might not be the same thing for someone who didn't grow up in America. Like there are cultures...
people who don't grow up in America are fine with nudity, so that's not an issue.
Not all of them. I mean, there's Middle Eastern cultures out there where women are very cloistered, and you wouldn't see that. So I'm just saying that I absolutely get what you're saying, and I agree with you that I think he's losing his mind, and I think it's very unrealistic. But at the same time, there might be something we're missing here because it's not our culture.
I mean, I know that this is written for comedy. At least I assume it was written for comedy. But, like, I don't know. It just feels a little insulting.
Maybe it's just another one of those things where this book was written in the 90s. And sensibilities have kind of shifted.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm not going to say sensibilities have changed, but I think there definitely has been a shift.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not claiming patriarchy, although it's been a while since I've done that. Weird deal. But I mean, I'm not saying this is problematic because it's not.
Right.
It just... It's too much. It feels lazy.
Oh, there's that word again.
It feels lazy and cheap. No offense. Like, I feel like sometimes I come down really hard. I do love these books. I do really enjoy them. And I think they're very well written. But that doesn't mean they're perfect.
No.
And this feels lazy and cheap to me.
Now, I think our listeners probably caught on to the fact that this is not our favorite book. Because of things like this. And other things as well. But yeah, we love this entire series.
I just want to freaking get to Kyrie.
But we also want to be very clear that there is stuff about this that we're not shying away from the fact that no, we don't like this, or it just isn't what it could be,
Yeah.
When does Tom get back? I want Tom back.
Soon, very soon. We're almost there.
Ditch Celine, stick with Tom. He's your homeboy. You're good to go.
Yeah. Anyway, enough of that.
When Huron sees the fire and thinks that he's found the Dark Friends, Rand wants to follow them and wait for Ingtar and his lances before confronting them. Mm-hmm. It's the safe option. But since we know that the power of boners compels thee, Rand is convinced to go after the Dark Friends instead.
Yeah.
All in all, taking Loyal to at least scout the situation is a good idea. Mm-hmm. But it bugs me that it took him being prodded by Lanfear to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Rand is smart enough to figure this out himself, but his IQ is significantly lower when Celine is around.
Yeah. We haven't really mentioned it yet, but Celine keeps calling Loyal a lantern.
Yes.
And Rand finally asks him about it. Loyal tells him that it's the old tongue. It means brother and is short for a Vende Lantin, or brother of the trees. It's a very formal way of saying tree brother, and another hint that Selene is not what she seems.
Yeah. It's interesting that Loyal comments on how Rand's voice sounds different when he's in the void.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why Loyal still hasn't figured out that Rand can channel.
Yeah, I don't know.
Rand has been acting weird ever since they woke up in the portal world and they used the stones to get back. Loyal should have figured this out by now.
Definitely. I don't know why Loyal hasn't figured it out either. He totally should have.
Yeah.
So up to this point, Loyal thinks that they're on a scouting mission. They were supposed to see if they had the horn and get an idea of how many baddies they were dealing with. Rand makes an on-the-spot decision to try to take the horn and the dagger. And I feel so sorry for Loyal for the rest of this scene. Like, I'm not saying that Rand was wrong, because it ultimately paid off. But it was rash and kind of shitty to put Loyal in that position without any warning.
Yeah. As Rand and Loyal try to Mission Impossible their way to the horn and dagger, Rand is thinking about how Selene is waiting for them back at the camp and the glory that she keeps talking about. Mm-hmm. And Rand gets this inner thought of, this is madness. You are going mad. And the book describes the voice as dim thoughts, someone else's thoughts. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this is not Rand's thought, but Lews Therin coming out for the first time. And I also think that the thoughts are more of a reflection of Rand giving into Lanfear's influence, not just a crazy attempt to snatch the horn. What do you think?
It could be LTT, but I also just think that it might be a creative way for saying that he's in the void and a little bit dissociated.
Okay.
So the dim thoughts, as if they're someone else's thoughts, is because of that distance between the outside of the void and the inside of the void.
Okay.
Later, when he lets go of the void, he kind of comes back to himself and then realizes what he's done. So I just think that this might be Jordan's way of making the distinction between Rand in the void and then Rand normally.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. So let's get to the part of the chapter everyone really wants to hear about. Rand going all badass ninja and kicking Trolloc ass left and right and sideways.
Totally.
Rand is holding the void and Sedan keeps beckoning to him, but he's resisting it. He's flowing from one sword form to the other, totally in the serenity of the void. He's like a machine, and it's just a sharp contrast to the last time that he fought back in Faldara. Mm-hmm. I think he's channeling LTT, not the power, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, this probably is bleed through. Like, I could definitely see some LTT influence here. Rand is not fully himself as he's dancing through these forms, slashing through Trollocs.
Yeah.
You know, he's so singular of purpose, and he's almost compelled to keep fighting.
Yeah.
He's also a little suicidal, you know, that I think is the biggest tip that it could be LTT bleed through.
Yeah.
He thinks to himself, better to be dead. And even though he knows that there are too many to fight in the camp and live, he still takes a few steps that way until Loyal calls him back.
True.
He takes his time to wipe the blood from his blade and sheath his sword formally as if Lan were watching, and then saunters over to Loyal without a care in the world. And Loyal is beside himself by this point and ready to kill Rand. You know, like when he finally lets go of the void, Rand snaps out of it and realizes what he's done. He says that he thinks he's going mad, and I love Loyal's response. Quote, "Sometimes you do not understand half of what you say," Loyal said. "If you must go mad, could it at least wait until we are back with the ladies Selene and Huron? How are you going to ride with that in your saddle?" "I will run." The Ogier suited his words by breaking into a quick trot, pulling his horse behind him by the reins. Rand followed.
Oi.
Loyal is awesome.
Yeah, I love Loyal. He's, gosh, I'm not really sure what to say about this last bit of Rand's point of view. Rand seems to be less under Lanfear's thrall at this point, and he's making better decisions, but she still is influencing him.
Yeah, even though Selene is flirting for all she's worth, Rand has a little more resolve and can resist her better. He says that something took hold of him And for a while, he wanted some things, but now he thinks better of it and wants to take the horn to Shinar. She also tries to get him to get rid of the dagger, and there's no way he's going to do that when Matt needs it.
Right.
And she gets really pissy about it. She turns very sour when Rand stands up to her.
Yeah. I can't wait for Rand to get to Carrion and be reunited with a certain Gleeman. I'm done with Selene. I'm just
For
done with
sure.
her.
Yeah, agreed.
So yes, it's cheesy. But Thane cackling into the night and screaming that the world will pay works for me.
Okay.
It's so over the top, but I like it. Like,
Yeah.
Cue madness and lean into it.
Okay. All right. Sure.
That ends chapters 18 and 19 of The Great Hunt. Join us next week for chapters 20 and 21, where Rand is distracted by something big and shiny, and we get to Kyrian.
Yay. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure that you rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. If you could leave us a positive review, it would really help us out. It makes us more visible so people can find us easier. You can tweet us at Pod-Thru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com and tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.